Charge! Kill them all!
Hold the line! Defend the cabin!
I love you. Will you marry me?
2 Orc girls faced death for one cruel reason. Then he changed everything. They were going to butcher 2 orc women before sunrise, not for treason, not for theft, not for war, for failing their clan in the one way that mattered most. The older one was still on her knees when the first blade came down. Blood ran over the stones, her wrists were chained, her face was bruised, even half dead. She still looked dangerous enough to make armed men keep their distance. Beside her, the younger orc girl was shaking so hard she could barely breathe. Her execution mark still wet across her forehead. Then the horses panicked. A cart slammed through the trees. One human man jumped down before it fully stopped. No armor, no soldiers, no grand weapon, just a wood axe, a rope knife, and the kind of reckless courage that gets poor men killed. He did not ask who they were. He did not wait to understand the law. He hit one guard with the cart pole, cut the younger girl loose, and turned just in time to see the older orc rip a chain from the post with her bare hands. She was stronger than anyone there, and someone had betrayed her badly enough to leave her here. When her burning eyes locked on the human, he expected her to kill him next. Instead, she grabbed his shirt, dragged herself close, and said, "Run." Because the men coming through the dark behind them were not executioners. They were her own people. He ran because she told him to, and because the sound behind them was worse than anything in front of them. The younger orc girl stumbled twice before he caught her. The older one did not fall, but she was fading fast. Blood kept slipping down her side. One of her legs dragged in the mud. Even so, she stayed between him and the men hunting them, as if she would rather die standing than let anyone touch the girl behind her. He got them off the road and into the forest, pushing through thorn and pine until his chest burned and his hands went numb from cold. By the time he reached his cabin, dawn was still far off, and fear had settled deep into his bones. His home was barely a home at all. A crooked, one-room shack at the edge of the valley, built from old timber and patched with whatever he could afford. One bed, one table, a shelf of dried herbs, a cracked water basin, a small iron stove that only stayed warm if he kept feeding it wood. He lived there alone, doing hard jobs other men avoided, hauling, mending, chopping, trapping, digging graves. When winter came early, people in the village knew his face, but not his heart. He was useful, not loved. Now 2 orc women stood inside the only thing he owned. The younger one collapsed near the stove, too exhausted to resist. But the older one stayed on her feet for several seconds more, swaying, eyes sharp, one hand braced against the wall. She looked wrong in that room, too large, too fierce, too commanding. Even wounded, she made the poor little cabin feel smaller, as if it had not been built to contain someone like her. When he reached for clean cloth and a bowl of water, she caught his wrist. Her grip was weak compared to what it should have been, but still strong enough to stop him cold. "I said run," she muttered. "And you're bleeding on my floor," he shot back, more shaken than brave. "So sit down." For the first time, something flashed across her face that was not rage, not fear, surprise. She let go. He knelt to cut away the torn leather at her side, and that was when he saw it. Beneath the blood and dirt hidden near her collar, a broken iron clasp stamped with a symbol no common fighter would wear. He did not know what it meant, but he knew at once this woman was not just a fugitive, and outside, somewhere beyond the trees, a horn began to sound. The horn echoed once, then went silent. He froze with the bloody cloth in his hand. The older orc lifted her head at once, every muscle in her body tightening like a drawn bow. Even hurt, she knew that sound. The younger girl near the stove made a small, frightened noise and pulled her knees closer to her chest. No firelight in the window, the older one said, low and sharp. He moved without arguing. He threw an old blanket over the thin opening beside the stove and pushed the lamp farther back into the room until the cabin fell into a dim orange gloom. Only then did he return to her side. Up close, the wound looked worse than he had thought. The cut along her ribs was deep, rough-edged, and angry around the skin. Not a clean blade. Something hooked had torn her. There was another bruise darkening along her shoulder, and rope burns around both wrists. Whoever had taken her down had needed more than chains. "I need to clean it," he said. She watched him in silence. "If I wanted you dead," he added, "I would have left you where I found you." That earned the faintest shift in her expression. Not trust, but something close enough to let him keep working. He heated water, crushed dried root and bitter leaf, and stitched the worst of the tear while she sat rigid on the chair, jaw tight, one hand gripping the table hard enough to make it creak. She never cried out, not once. The younger orc girl turned away halfway through, unable to watch. He noticed that the older one did not. She kept her eyes open through all of it, as if pain only proved she was still in control of herself. When he finished, he handed her a cup. She sniffed it once and frowned. "This is medicine?" "It keeps fever down. It smells like swamp." "Bark! It tastes worse than it smells," he said. For the first time, the younger girl almost smiled. The older one drank anyway. By morning, snow had started to fall in soft sheets beyond the cabin. The world outside turned white and quiet, but inside, everything felt tense and small. He made broth from bones, onion, and the last of his dried herbs. The younger girl accepted it with both hands and drank too quickly, like someone who had gone hungry too many days in a row. The older one stared at the bowl before touching it. "You don't eat?" he asked. She tapped the rim with her knuckles first, then took the first swallow. He noticed. "What was that?" She looked at him as if the answer should be obvious. "A thanks." To who? Her eyes moved once toward the roof, then toward the earth under the floorboards. To those above, to those below, to the blood that still. "Let's us stand." He gave a small nod. "Humans just blow on it and hope not to burn their mouth." The younger girl let out a weak laugh before covering it, startled by the sound coming from herself. Even the older one looked caught off guard for half a breath. That became the shape of the day. Silence, small tasks, care without comfort. He split wood, fed the stove, rewrapped bandages, set traps near the tree line. Each time he reached for the door, the older orc tracked him with her eyes, as if measuring whether he would come back. Each time he returned, she said nothing, but something in the room eased. Near dusk, he found the younger girl trying to hide a shaking hand while holding her bowl. Fear, cold, and weakness had worn her down more than she wanted to admit. He took the bowl without a word, thickened the broth with mashed roots, and brought it back softer, easier to swallow. She blinked at him, then lowered her gaze. The older one had seen everything. Later that night, while wind pressed hard against the walls, the younger girl woke from sleep with a choking gasp and tried to scramble off the bed. "No, please, please, I can bear it. I can—" He was beside her first, catching her shoulders before she fell. "You're safe," he said. "Listen to me. You're inside. No one's here." She was trembling so badly she could barely breathe. Across the room, the older orc tried to rise too fast, pain cutting through her at once. He saw the fury on her face then, not at him, but at her own weakness. She could not get to the girl before he did, so he stayed where he was, speaking softly until the younger one's breathing slowed. Only when she stopped shaking did he step back. The room was quiet again. Then he turned and found the older orc watching him in the firelight. Her face had changed, just a little. Some hard piece of it had loosened when he finally sat down near The door with his axe across his knees. Sleep took him before he meant it to. The fire burned low. Snow tapped at the walls. Somewhere in the night, without waking him, someone laid an extra blanket over his shoulders. He knew in the morning it had not been the younger girl, and when he opened the door to check the traps, he found fresh tracks in the snow. Large, booted. Deliberate, not his, not human. He did not call them to the door. He stepped outside alone, pulled it shut behind him, and stood in the grey morning with the cold biting through his boots. The tracks cut cleanly across the snow from the tree line to the back of the cabin, then vanished again into the woods. Whoever had come close enough to see the place had chosen not to force entry. That was worse. When he came back in, the older orc was already awake, sitting upright despite the pain in her side. "You saw them," she said. He set down the empty trapline and shut the latch. "I saw enough." Her gaze sharpened. "How many?" "I only saw prints." "That means they were scouts." He looked at her. "You say that like it helps." "It means they are not ready to strike," she answered. "If they were, this cabin would already be ash." That should have calmed him. It did not. The younger girl stayed quiet through the exchange, hands wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. The room felt different now, smaller, tighter. Whatever shelter they had built over the last day had cracks in it. Still, the day had to move. He spent the morning repairing the shutter latch, dragging brush over the back trail, and checking the hidden root cellar beneath the floorboards in case they needed somewhere to hide the younger girl fast. When he came back inside, he found something he did not expect. The older orc was mending his winter coat. It looked awkward in her large hands, but careful. She had taken one of his bent needles and the better thread from his work shelf. The torn sleeve he had ignored for weeks was now stitched with strong, neat binding knots he had never seen before. He stopped in the doorway. She did not look up. "Your sewing is embarrassing." He stared, then let out a rough breath that almost turned into a laugh. "That's the closest thing to kindness I've heard from you." "It is not kindness," she said. "It is irritation." But the younger girl smiled into her cup, and that small warmth stayed in the room longer than either of them admitted. Later, while snow fell harder beyond the walls, the younger girl dozed by the stove, and the cabin sank into the hush of afternoon. He sat near the table, trimming dried stems for medicine. The older orc watched him from the chair, where she had begun spending more time, wrapped in one of his plain blankets. "You live like this every winter?" she asked. He shrugged. "Every season, mostly." "Alone," he kept cutting. "Mostly." She was quiet for a moment. "No mate, no kin. No one waiting for you in the village." The question should have sounded cruel. Somehow, from her, it did not. "No one waiting," he said. "Just work." She looked toward the roof, the stove, the rough shelves, the patched walls. "You keep this place alive with your own hands. That's one way to say I'm too poor to lose anything." For the first time, she did not answer quickly. Her face changed in the firelight. Not softer exactly, more honest. "In my world," she said at last, "nothing is your own, even when it looks like wealth. Your name belongs to the clan. Your strength belongs to its wars. Your body belongs to its future. Even grief must be approved." His hands slowed. She went on, voice lower now. "People looked at me and saw power. They never asked whether I was tired." That landed harder than anything dramatic could have, because he knew that feeling in a different shape, being seen only for what you could provide, being useful before being human. He set the herbs down, and the girl, at once, something protective flared in her eyes. She was judged, the older orc said, by men too proud to call cruelty by its name. For not being able to, he hesitated, her jaw tightened, for not giving the clan what it wanted from her. He looked toward the sleeping girl by the stove. So young in that moment, so worn, and you fought them. I broke the hand of the elder who spoke her sentence." He stared at her. She met his gaze without shame. That should have frightened him. Instead, against all sense, it made him respect her more. By evening, the younger girl woke stronger and asked almost shyly if there was more wood to stack. He tried to refuse, but she insisted, and soon the cabin held a strange rhythm of shared work. He split kindling, she sorted it by size. The older orc, still too injured for heavy movement, showed him how orcs wrapped leather around tool handles to keep grip in sleet and blood. He used the method on his axe. It fit better at once. The differences between them no longer felt sharp at every turn. They felt interesting. Human meals were thin but warm. Orc portions were larger, salted harder, eaten with less waste and more silence. Humans muttered thanks to weather and luck. Orcs named strength like an ancestor sitting at the fire. He started noticing how she always chose the seat facing the door. She noticed how he always made sure the younger girl had the warmest place, without ever pointing it out. That night he returned from checking the back path with a look she read before he spoke. "What is it?" He shut the door carefully. "The village." His voice was tight. "There were men on the road asking where I'd been last night. One of them saw blood on the cartwheel I hadn't scrubbed deep enough." The younger girl went still. He looked at the older orc. "If the villagers come here first, they'll panic. If your scouts come first, we're dead. And if both arrive together—" He did not finish. She rose too quickly, pain cutting through her side, but she stayed standing anyway. For the first time since he had dragged her into the cabin, she looked less like a hunted woman and more like whatever she had been before all this. Dangerous, commanding, used to deciding who lived through the next hour. Then the younger girl, pale and shaken, whispered something she clearly had not meant to say aloud. "My lady." The room went silent. He turned slowly toward the older orc. She closed her eyes for one brief second, and then someone knocked on the cabin door. The knock came again, not loud, not desperate, controlled. The kind of knock made by someone who already believed the door would open. The human man did not move at first. His eyes were still on her. "My lady," he repeated, the words sounding wrong in his small cabin. The older orc opened her eyes and looked straight at him. There was no use hiding now, not with the girl trembling beside the stove, not with danger already on the threshold. "Do not open it yet," she said. He let out a dry, unbelieving breath. "That's what you have to say first?" Another knock. Then a voice from outside, human this time. "Open up!" It was one of the men from the village. The human stepped toward the door, but kept his hand on the latch without lifting it. "Tell me who you are." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, she seemed to hate the question, not because it insulted her, but because she knew what it would destroy. Then she said it. "I am Varka of the Stone Teeth bloodline, war-born daughter of High Matron Osha, first blade of the Eastern Ridge." Her voice was low, iron-hard, made for command even when weakened. "I was promised a clan seat before I had seen 20 winters. Men kneel when I enter the hall. Women of rank do not speak my name without title." The room felt smaller than ever. He stared at her as if the firelight had changed her face into someone else's. Suddenly, the broken clasp, the formal speech, the way she filled every silence with pressure instead of fear. It all made sense, and it made him feel like a fool. "You let me patch you up like some nameless fugitive," he said. "I let you save our lives. That's not the same thing." Outside, a fist hit the door harder this time. "We know you're in there." But the true noise was inside him now. She was not just dangerous. She was the kind of woman men got dragged into wars over. A clan, heir, a power, someone whose enemies would cross borders to find her. And he, poor, forgotten, alone, had been foolish enough to think the distance between them could shrink inside one cabin. The younger orc girl looked between them, frightened. "Please." He looked at her. And you? Who are you to her? The older one answered before the girl could. She is mine to protect. That is not what I asked. Silence stretched. Then the truth came like a blade drawn too late. She is my blood, Varka said. My younger sister. He felt something. Drop in his chest. Sister, not servant, not follower, not chance companion. Blood, Varka went on, her voice colder now, but pain sat underneath it. She was examined by the clan women after 2 failed betrothal trials. They judged that she would never bear strong heirs. My mother was dead. The Elder Council wanted the stain buried quickly. They declared her broken, useless to alliance, unworthy of protection. The younger girl flinched as if each word still struck. And when I refused, Varka said, when I stood in the hall and said no daughter of my blood would be slaughtered like weak stock, they called it rebellion. I broke the elder's hand, before the whole council. By dusk, we were both sentenced. The man's throat tightened. All at once, the cruelty behind everything became clear. This had never been only about barrenness. It was about control, about fear, about a clan so obsessed with strength and lineage that it would butcher one woman and erase another to keep its order intact. From outside, the human voice rose again. "Open the door now, or we break it!" Varka took one step forward despite the pain in her side. Even wounded, she looked more like a leader in that moment than anyone he had ever known. "There is more," she said. His face hardened. "Of course there is." Her gaze held his. "The men hunting us are not only scouts. One of them is Drogan, son of the council's oldest war chief. He was meant to claim me in a binding before spring. With me dead or dragged back in chains, his father secures my clan seat. With my sister dead, there is no witness left to challenge their sentence. So that was the full shape of it. Politics, blood, marriage, power. And he had let all of it into his home. He took a slow step back from her, not because he stopped caring, because caring now hurt. She saw it, that distance, that sudden, painful awareness of what stood between them. Her face changed, just for a second, and for the first time since he had met her, she looked wounded in a way that had nothing to do with blood. The door shuddered under. A heavy blow. Then came another sound from beyond the cabin. Not one voice, many human voices from the road, and beneath them, lower and more dangerous, the horn call of orc riders closing in through the trees. The next blow nearly tore the latch loose. The human villagers were shouting now, frightened and angry, while the horn outside came closer through the trees, like something old and merciless waking in the dark. For one terrible moment, it felt as though the whole world had arrived to rip the cabin apart. He moved toward the younger sister first. That decided something in Varka's eyes. Not pride, not rank, something far rarer. Trust. "There is a root cellar beneath the floor," he said quickly. "If they break in, she goes down first." Varka looked at him, breathing hard through the pain in her side. "No!" He turned sharply. "No! She does not hide while I bargain for her life again. That's not what this is." Another crash hit the door. Snow shook loose from the frame. Varka stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Listen to me." He did. For the first time since she entered his cabin, she did not sound like a commander giving orders. She sounded like a woman standing at the edge of losing everything. "If I walk out there alone," she said, "Drogan will take me back in chains and kill her later. If I surrender both of us, he wins cleanly. If I fight now, with my wound still open, I may kill a few men before they put an axe through my spine." She swallowed once. "There is only one move left that he will not expect." He frowned. "What move?" Her gaze did not leave his face. "You." He stared at her. Outside, wood splintered. Inside, the younger sister made a frightened sound and backed toward the stove. Varka took another step toward him until she stood so close he could see how pale she had become under the green-grey strength of her skin. "In my world," she said, each word deliberate, "a woman of my blood cannot be claimed if she has already chosen a bond that carries witness and vow. It is old law, older than the council, older than Drogon's father. They ignore it when it suits them, but they cannot break it in front of riders and villagers, both without showing their own cowardice." His chest went tight. "You are not saying what I think you're saying. I am." Her voice dropped lower. "Come with me. Stand beside me when I open that door. I will name you under witness. I will give you my protection, my land right beyond the eastern ridge, my fire, my name if you want it, or exile with me if my title is stripped. Whatever survives this, I will not leave you behind in it." For a second he forgot the pounding on the door, forgot the horn, forgot the snow. All he could feel was the weight of what she was offering, not a rescue, not a favor, a place, and that was exactly what made it so terrifying. He shook his head once, stunned. "You don't even know if your people would ever accept me." "They won't," she said plainly. That answer hit harder than comfort would have. She went on anyway. "Many will hate you. Some will mock you. Some will wait for you to fail. My world is harder than this cabin, crueler than your valley, and it will cost you the rest of the life you knew." Her voice roughened but never broke. "I know what I am asking." He looked at his rough table, his patched coat, the narrow bed, the stove he had fed alone through too many winters. This had been his whole life, small, poor, and empty enough that leaving it should have been easy. It was not easy, because if he took her hand, he would not just be stepping toward her. He would be stepping out of everything he understood. "I am not made for clan halls," he said quietly. "I'm not a warrior. I'm not noble. I'm a man people remember when something breaks." Varka's eyes held his with a force stronger than shouting. "Good," she said. "Then stand beside me as the man who mended what my world tried to destroy." That went through him like fire. Behind him, the younger sister whispered, "Please." The latch cracked. He had one life behind him and one impossible future in front of him, and somewhere between fear and longing, something inside him finally stopped shrinking. He stepped toward Varka. Not all the way. Not yet, but enough. Her hand opened between them, and just before the door gave way, he reached for it. When the door finally opened, it did not open to peace. It opened to snow, fear, steel, and judgment. Human villagers stood back in shock at the sight of Varka rising to her full height beside the man they thought they knew. Orc riders emerged between the trees with weapons drawn, and at their front sat Drogon, broad-shouldered and certain, already wearing the look of a man who believed victory had finally arrived. He lost that look the moment Varka spoke. Her voice, carried across the clearing, not weak now, not hunted, but sharp enough to cut through both human panic and orc pride. She named the old law before witnesses from both peoples. She named her sister as blood under her protection. Then, with the whole world watching, she named the human man as the one she had chosen to stand beside. The silence that followed was not empty. It was stunned. Drogon tried to call it desperation, tried to call it invalid, tried to make the old law disappear with force and arrogance. But too many had heard. Too many had seen the truth of why she had fled and why the younger sister had been marked for death. Even among the orcs, doubt spread fast. No clan stays strong for long when its leaders begin to fear witness more than shame. The price was real. Varka did not keep everything. Her claim to a high seat was stripped. The council would never forgive what had been exposed. Some doors in, her own world closed forever the moment she chose him in public. The human man lost his old life too. The village that once barely noticed him now looked at him with fear, gossip, and distance. He could not go back to being small and invisible, so they built something else. not in the center of her old power, and not in the valley that had never truly been his, but on the wild land between them, where forest met ridge and no law could pretend not to see them. The younger sister lived there too, and for the first time in her life, no one measured her worth by what her body might give a clan. She laughed more, slept through the night, learned to plant, mend, and choose her own days, and Varka changed in ways no one from her old life would have believed. She still stood like a warrior, still carried danger in her silence. But now there were mornings when she brought in wood instead of weapons, nights when she slept without reaching for a blade, times when her fierce voice softened at the sound of his step outside the door. As for him, he was no longer only the man called when things broke. He had become the man who stayed. The first winter after it all, snow fell thick around their new home. He stepped inside with cold on his shoulders and found Varka by the fire, her sister beside her, the room warm with bread, broth, and quiet life. On the wall near the door hung the broken iron clasp he had once found hidden beneath her bloodied collar, not as a mark of what she had been hunted for, but as proof that the night meant to end them had become the place where everything changed. And when Varka took his rough hand into her larger one, there was no fear left in it at all.